Perfect.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for coming to my webinar on learning to groom your Schnauzer puppy. I have a lot of fundamentals and basics to share with you to help you get started on this journey. A lot of people tend to think that grooming your puppy is all about the techniques, the clippers, the scissors, how do I brush, how do I do toenails, the how do I technical. And while those are important, obviously important parts of the grooming process, they're actually pretty far down the road to getting that job done. And in fact, it's an important part to realize that getting the job done, in air quotes like that, is actually not what it's about when you're grooming your puppy, when you're learning to groom your puppy. You're building a relationship first. You have to build the relationship before you can learn the techniques or before you can apply the techniques. So that's why there's plenty of time and there's no rush, because you have to build on a couple of different principles. Building your grooming relationship is kind of like building a house, and you are the foreman or the architect or the foreman, and the puppy is kind of like the builders. And it's a little like you also have a language barrier there. So you have to have a clear idea of where you're going and what you want to create. And then you can structure the situations in such a way that the puppies can succeed. And through that, you build the relationship, you build that building. And part of what we have to take into account there is instinctive resistance is normal. There's a lot of things that the puppy will do to resist us that's based on instinct, that's based on, I have insecurity if something happens, like having their paws held. Well, their paws are super important to their survival. So they have very strong instincts about letting their feet be vulnerable. Same with their heads, their faces. Plus, there's a social element with dogs, and particularly with puppies, about mouthing each other's faces, and that's a control issue. So we have to be sensitive to those things and recognize that we are going to encounter instinctive resistance. And so we will need to teach exercises that help them to learn that they don't have to just respond instinctively. So we have the instinct on the one hand, and us learning to support the puppy to choose against instinctive reactions. And if you hear some puppy play in the background, that's because a couple of my demos are in a pen over there, and they're wrestling after they just dragged something into the pen. So now, in addition to the instinct, puppies are very impulsive, and they do the first thing that pops into their head. And so if we bring impulse and instinct together, those two are the basis of resistance. The puppy will instinctively have a response and then impulsively react to that instinctive response. So there's a couple of things we want to do with that. For the impulse piece, we can build the attention span, and we can do that with restraint exercises, handling exercises, leash training, other training, sit, stay, other basic puppy obedience, and building self-control by creating situations where they have to make a decision, stick with it in order to get something. And some classic examples of that, it's a little like building a muscle. So, in the beginning, we don't have much muscle. And if we go to the gym, we can slowly build muscle. So we don't start out expecting a puppy to have impulse control. We don't expect them to be able to just discount their instincts. So we work with them on that. Something you can do to build the attention span separate from grooming entirely is if you are doing basic obedience and you're starting to ask the dog to do a little bit longer stays before you give them a treat, or the puppy wants to jump up on you and you hold the treat until they choose to not, and then you give it to them. And so they start to kind of get this idea that if they do certain behaviors, it controls your behavior. Now, you're one level above them because you already know, well, the reason I'm waiting for the dog to sit or to hold the sit for 5 seconds to give the treat is so the puppy will think that sitting for 5 seconds is what makes me give them the treat. And then they feel like they have a little more agency, they have a little more control. They're co-creating the experience with you. So you can work on that. So much of restraint in grooming involves controlling the head, and we'll get to that in a minute. But it's really important to recognize that if you haven't done leash training with your puppy, then putting the table leash on here, that's going to be hard for the puppy to make a transition, and especially because it's short and it's confining. So it's important that you do your leash training. And even if you have a lovely fenced yard, you still need to go take your puppy for regular walks, get them used to that you have direction. You can give directions and you can have some basic control through an attachment to the collar, whether it's a collar and leash or a grooming loop or whatever. So recognize that if your puppy is challenging to work with in very basic and easy areas, like going for a walk, if they just turn into a bucking bronco the moment that you put a leash on them and you try to walk them, well, you can predict that that's going to be problematic. That same puppy is going to have instant problems when you get them on the table. So that just tells you, work on your basics, build your foundations. And, that may mean get an obedience class. It may mean get a trainer to come into your home to help you, but recognize that all of the training, all of the handling stuff comes into play together, and your grooming relationship is not in a vacuum. It is reflective of your entire relationship. So along with this, I want you to remember and think about, this may be disruptive for some people, but you are not entitled to your puppy's cooperation. Just because the puppy is your puppy doesn't inherently mean anything to the puppy in terms of their need to cooperate with you. And their degree of cooperation is going to be based on, as I've said before now, instinct and impulse. You can't really change the instincts. You can work with them and be supportive as they learn to trust you more than their instincts, but we can't change the instincts. We can change their impulsiveness, though. So that's the place where you really want to do some work. And now, in grooming specifically, I've talked about this in some of my earlier videos. You can sit them on your lap. You can wrap them in a towel. One of the things that I do to help just with restraint in general is I carry my puppies all over the place. Not like in a cuckoo, oh, aren't you the sweetest little baby? I mean, under my arm, I have chores around the house, and I'm carrying a puppy under one arm. And then the puppy learns, oh, well, this human does seem to be kind of in charge of my physical body right now, and it seems to be fine. And that way they get used to, if I'm bending over, oh, we changed orientation a little bit. Oh, if I reach up or, switch arms, and they just get used to the fact that they can trust that I have them, that I I'm not going to drop them. I'm not going to cause them to have something happen. And it just starts to build a foundation of trust. So if your puppy's still young enough and small enough for you to carry your puppy around a lot, that's a really good way to go. And in the 3-month program, Learn to Groom Your Schnauzer Puppy, which we'll talk about for a short time a little later in the webinar, I will go into specific holds and specific ways of holding the dog, holding the puppy so they're secure, especially if they start getting flaily or when we start getting into adolescence, then we definitely hit a point of, I know I was fine with this before, but I'm not going to be fine with it anymore. And then you have to work through that too. So working through stuff like that off the grooming table has massive benefits when you put them on the grooming table. Now, just in general, along with this, while you're teaching and while the puppy's learning, both of you will probably be learning some emotional regulation with each other. And also just remember, don't take things personally. Don't take resistance personally. It's instinct and impulsivity. They can't control either one of those until they have had enough experiences and exercises that bring them out in them. So don't take it personally if they don't trust you. If they're like, no, I don't want to deal with that, I'm not ready for that. That's not about you. That's just about the individual puppy and their flexibility and what their experiences are. And we just work through and around those. Okay. Now, let me get a puppy here. Get one. Come at you. Come here. All right. All right. So this is Kringle, and so I know for our European or our non-North American audience, we don't do cropped ears. We really only do them still in North America. But my other demo puppy has a natural tail. So I'm equal opportunity controversial no matter who's watching. So we'll just consider it that way. One of the things I want to say though, and part of why I chose one of my cropped puppies as a demo or an example for this part, it's well known or spoken of in the dog show community, handlers, trainers. If you control the head, you control the dog. And that's also part of why they're resistant to having their head controlled. They instinctively know, if you control my head, you control me. Now, one of the things that I have noticed, since I don't do all cropped ears, I do not very many, in fact, anymore, but some. However, there's a fundamental difference in the puppies, typically in the puppies' willingness to be controlled on the grooming table. The cropped-eared puppies are more cooperative. And the reason for that is because working with their head and making them comply with what you need is non-negotiable, because you have to take stitches out. You have to care for the edges. You have to post them. You have to tape and glue ears. You have to take posts out. These are all things that socialize a cropped-eared puppy to, oh, okay, I guess this is normal. And we go through the process earlier of working through some of the resistance. I started noticing this when natural ear puppies became more common in the US as a professional groomer. And the first puppies that I would get with natural ears, just like, why are these puppies so hard to work with? And I figured it out. It's because they didn't have the level of head handling and such that the cropped-eared puppies had. So that's a sign to say, whatever your puppy is, start early. And if you don't start early, that's fine, but expect more resistance if you didn't start early. So, some things about the head, though. Now, a puppy is not going to be comfortable about having its head restrained until it's comfortable with having its body restrained. So this puppy has a lot of experience of sitting on my lap. He was pretty wiggly in the beginning, and I had used the towel technique that I've shown in a couple of videos now, where you wrap a towel around them to block the front legs so they can't bring the front legs up and flail with them. You can kind of hug them like this. It's good to do while you're watching TV, or if you're watching a video or something where you're just sitting still, not doing anything. You might as well practice some passive restraint with your puppy. And then that way, if they decide to have a tantrum, you can work through it without it being a big deal, and you're not attaching it to a job. You want to get something done. And that's one of the problems we find with puppies when we get them on the table is stop fussing. I want to get this done. And if you're finding yourself in that situation, go back and do some more fundamentals, some more foundational work with having the puppy sit on your lap, maybe kind of sit them up a little bit, because this feels a little more vulnerable to the puppy. So it gives me a chance to practice a little bit more stuff. He's pretty advanced with that. He's not really offering me any resistance particularly. And yeah. And periodically, so if he wants to lick my face, that's a little bit of appeasement. Hey, are we okay? This is a little intense for me. Are we okay? So I usually let them go ahead and give me a little bit of lickies, and just recognize that that's a way I can help put them at ease, so they can be like, oh, okay. Now, when we have worked through body restraint, and this is, me talking about carrying them around, and one of those holds is you put your arm over the ribs, come under the far front leg, and hold the elbow that's closest to you. Now, this puppy, even if he were to start flailing around, he's not going anywhere. I've got a solid grip on him. And if he was a little bigger and he's kind of flailing his head around, then I can come around like this and hold him pretty solidly, and he can learn, oh, okay, flailing actually is just ineffective, so I'll stop trying to use it. So that's a really helpful grip. And the older they are, even up until 4 months, if it's a smaller puppy, or you're a bigger person, even up into 5 months, it's a good exercise to practice with them, to pick them up with the hand around the elbow closest to you, and then you can squeeze them to you. Just kind of move your head out of the way, because if they start flailing, they can toss their head around, and you don't want them to crack you in the jaw. That's not fun. So once you have control of the body, now we can start introducing some more control of the head. And where they're the most sensitive is about the muzzle. And a lot of puppies early on are just like, oh, you can't hold my face. But literally the most important restraint for grooming is holding the muzzle, because we have to keep them still when we're going to put scissors near their eyes. We're going to put clippers near their ears. We need them to be still to be safe. So we can't skip these handling exercises. Now, when I first start out with a puppy, because they're so reactive to having their muzzle held, you're being too good of a demo, actually, but that's fine. So what they usually do is they try to pull backwards, and they're always going to be sensitive to you holding their face, but they're a little more tolerant if the pressure is behind their head. So if they're really struggling, I control them more by putting my palm on the back of their head or the back of their neck, and kind of just keeping them from going farther, doing this more. And that starts to get them again to see, oh, I have control. Okay, What we don't want to do is we don't want the flailing to escalate, because once they're full scale flailing all over the place, that's when they start getting into a panic, because both their emotions and your emotions start to go off the chart at that point. And so we want to keep things from getting to that point. So we can pressure on the back of the head, and then that's, so if I do some of that, and then I'm starting to hold the muzzle and they want to pull back, I'm putting more pressure here so I don't have to grip with my hand. I want my hand to just here to just be a guide. Pressure if I need it to keep the puppy from getting away on the back of the head. Now, let me show you another technique that'll be really helpful for you. But first off, when I'm first introducing a dog to the grooming table, I want to use a non-stick mat, non-slip mat. And if you don't have a grooming table, you're not sure you're ready to commit to grooming yet, that's fine. A washer dryer is a really good height. Just put a non-slip like bath mat or something on it so they have good footing. So do that. And the technique I use to really start teaching them about restraint of their face is I have a collar here. The wider, the better. And you want it to be big enough that you can fit a couple of fingers into it. So one of the things when we get to the point where we are using a grooming loop, this one's too high. And always keep a hand on your puppy. They're crazy and they could be just fine and then suddenly go flying off. So, but when we get to this point of using the loop, one of the things they do is they usually try to back up. When they're trying to get out of it, they back up. And then what's the first thing that happens? There's pressure on their throat. And now they're afraid of that because now they think they're choking. So before we even get to that, this is a great exercise. Use the strap collar. Like I said, wide is good. Gonna put my fingers in the front so that the jaw is on either side of my fingers. My fingers are protecting the trachea from any pressure. So even while they're struggling and fighting and they're backing up, well, the pressure is on the back of the collar, back here, which since I've been working with putting my hand back there to block this kind of thing, then now with the collar on the back of the head and the back of the neck, then they're like, oh, that's that pressure on the back of the neck again. Okay, I kind of know what that means. All right, I won't fight quite so much. And you give them a chance to struggle a little bit. Yeah, moving forward, that's good. I like that. But I don't need you to jump up. So I'm just going to kind of reset. Back to square. But once they get really good with you having your fingers in the collar here, then you can up the ante a little bit. You know, now I could stick my fingers in the ears, or maybe now I pick up a foot, and then we just work through the resistance that we get. Now this puppy seems to want to come forward more than move back, and that's fine. I'll just reset him. Some puppies like to sit a lot. And if they do, that's usually a sign of vulnerability. So maybe I just help and reset. But kind of resetting them to their feet being more or less four square helps them learn where stability is for them. And so we just do a lot of exercises like this in the beginning when we're not even trying to do anything. I'm not going to have clippers here. I'm not going to have a Dremel or do toenails. I want to do a lot for the puppy to think that this is actually just another place they get love and they get attention. And maybe they get a special treat that you only give them when they're on the grooming table. So it's a little bit, they get kind of a nicer paycheck for it. And they have something to look forward to that only happens there. So those are some things that you can do with that. And then once they're not resistant too much to the collar and to being held by your fingers underneath, then we can start practicing a little bit more of muzzle techniques, muzzle holding. And you see, all I did was lay my thumb over his muzzle, and we got right into some new resistance. So that's fine. But I just recognize, okay, well, first I'm not going to let him control the situation. And then what I'm looking for is a moment of cooperation so I can end it. So that again, I can start trying to get the puppy to think they have some control. And if I can get them to honestly to believe that the sooner they relax, the sooner I let go and the sooner I stop, the more cooperative they're going to be as we go on into more challenging parts of the grooming relationship. Good. And if he's fussy, it's fine. I just reset. And a lot of times you won't even see all the progress in a given session. You won't see it till the next session. And then the next session, sometimes you can have the worst kind of knockdown, drag out, lack of cooperation, and you leave it going, oh my gosh, are we ever going to get this? And then the next time you put the puppy on the table, after they've had a chance to process all of that experience, they're much better. So we can keep that in mind too. Good puppy. Okay, so I had a moment of good cooperation there. So I'm going to use that as my opportunity for the moment to stop, to lift my puppy safely off the table. My arm comes underneath his belly, and I get the elbow closest to me, and I lift him right off. You don't want to let your puppy or your dog jump off the grooming table. You might set that to a cue that you decide on yourself, but if they think they get to decide that on any level, then they're constantly going to be trying to decide that for you. So I either just lift them off myself and put them down, or wait, have a cue, have them jump down. And I'd really only do that if physically lifting the puppy and putting the puppy down is unsafe or not healthy for you as an individual. Okay, so we just keep working through some of these issues. We have do a lot of this socialization stuff. The beginning of the Learn to Groom Your Puppy program is a lot of these socialization exercises and building them up to the point where we can start to introduce the equipment. Now, if you want to progress on your own, once you have worked through a lot of those issues that you were seeing me with Kringle on the table, then you go kind of back to square one, because you're going to then take your clippers or the Dremel and you're going to run that on the table behind them while you do the exercises we just did. And then that starts to get them used to this. Oh, well, now there's this new noise. I don't know about that. And then you go through the same process you did before and they go, oh, I see. The only thing new here is that sound. But the exercises that we're doing, the results when I struggle, they're still the same. So, okay, I guess this is the same, pretty much the same situation. Just remember, every time you add a new element of complexity, you have to kind of go back to the beginning of the socialization again. They don't stay at mastery of where they are when you add a new element. They have to learn the mastery with the new element. So keep that in mind to help them succeed. All right. You're a good little boy. All right. Let me go get somebody else. Hey, you. All right. It's my equal opportunity controversial puppy, because in the US tails are kind of controversial. And here we got one. Less and less all the time, but so I want to take a few minutes here real quick and just talk about some of the basics about the program. But at the end of this webinar, anybody who's here, if you have any questions about the information I give you about the puppy grooming program, just stay on, and we'll stop the recording of the webinar, and then I'll do some individual, I'll answer whatever questions you have if you'd like some more details about the puppy grooming program. But basically, it's going to be starting at the in a week, over the weekend, next weekend. It's going to run for 3 months through the end of the year. I run it mostly in my private Facebook group. So I put the video lessons there. That's where we have discussion of the lessons. It's a great opportunity for you to videotape whatever issue you're encountering so I can see it. I can either post another video in response or give some written suggestions. There can be discussion for other people in the group. Almost always, whatever issue one person is having, somebody else is having. But not everybody uses Facebook, and I understand that, and that's fine. So I'm also going to be presenting the course in weekly or bi-weekly email digests of the different lessons. So that'll summarize everything for you, give you descriptions of each of the lessons, and then you can follow it at your leisure, and not worry about joining Facebook if Facebook is not something that you're interested in being part of. Not everybody is, and that's fine. It's the normal price for the program's $450. I'm still doing just a couple more days of early bird pricing for $350. So if you sign up with me by Tuesday, then the price is $350. After that, it goes up to $450. I'll leave registration open for a week or two while we're doing some of the basic socialization. So if you need a little bit of time to decide, or you need a little time to get together, whatever you need to be able to join us, then there's plenty of time and you won't have missed anything you can't catch up with pretty easily, even if you start a week or so into the program with me. So, like I said, at the end, after we're done with the rest of the content, because I have one more segment of basic grooming I want to get you started with. If you want to stay to have any specific questions answered, then we'll stay for that. Okay. Now, the grooming that everybody needs to know something about, whether you're going to groom your dog or not, whether a professional is going to do it, but bathing your puppy. It's an underlooked thing, but I love puppies. Puppies are great. They like to roll in all kind of stuff that's just awful. They'll find it before you have even a clue. After a while, you start being like, wait, I don't like the way you're sniffing that. And if you're lucky, you can get them before they get that shoulder down into it. Now they've rolled in whatever that was. It used to be, people said, don't bathe your puppy very often. It's not good for them. The shampoo's harsh on them. And that was 30 years ago when we used to buy dog shampoo at the grocery store. But these days, there are a lot of really good and mild shampoos that won't hurt the dog's skin. And one of the best socialization tools that you can have for getting cooperation when you get on the grooming table is bathing your dog regularly, bathing your puppy regularly, because you have to have some restraint of them. They have to go and accept something that they, in most cases, would rather not. And then also, once they're all wet, there's a thing, puppies, they kind of go through a little period about 5-10 minutes afterwards of, oh, okay. And if you use that time and you have them wrapped up in a towel, it dries them, it gives them snuggle time and support time And it really helps them recognize, oh, mom or dad, okay, they're here to support me. Every time I hold a puppy around the neck, Zoom thinks I'm giving a thumbs up. So bathing is a really good thing to do. And there's a great time to use the collar exercise so you can hold them. Now, when you're starting to put the water on from the beginning, let's just start from the basics. We have a tendency to want to start at the head and move down. And that's exactly the opposite of what we want to do if we're getting a puppy used to it. We actually want to start down at the feet in the back and just have the water come up a little at a time. And if your dog is particularly resistant to the water or seems like they're really anxious or they're really trying to get away, then recognize if you're using a sprayer that it probably has to do with that. Splashing water is way more anxiety provoking in puppies than poured water. So one thing I do with little puppies or a puppy, if it's their first bath, is I often have a pitcher of water. And I have water in the tub already, an inch or so of it. So they're splashing around in it a little bit. They can get used to some splashing. It's sort of, they're causing it, so it makes more sense to them. But you take that pitcher of water and pour that over them. And you want warm. What's warm to you is going to be a little too hot for the puppy. So somewhere between tepid and warm, you're like, well, it's not cold. And you pour it. And the pouring is a lot easier for the puppy to accept. You can also use a sponge and soak it in the water in the tub. Like I said, if you've got a couple inches of water in your tub, and then squeeze the sponge into the fur. That's a good way to get them used to the water going in. You can make that soapy. That's a good way to soak them up. You want to get them wet first, or have your shampoo be pretty diluted like with the sponge, because if you try to take some concentrated shampoo and rub it into the puppy's fur, it's going to take you so long to rinse it out that you're going to get into more resistance if the puppy is not totally on board about the water at first. So having your shampoo and water and a sponge and soaping them up that way. Then once it's diluted real good, then you can do it with your fingers. And this is a good time to mention, some puppies are really stimulated by having their skin touched a lot. So before you do your bath, kind of you get an idea of this. If you pet them and you ruffle their fur a lot and it really fires them up, well, recognize that puppy may have more sensitivity about its skin, and you might need to do some more exercises where you do some like that. And then you just find that threshold where you can ruffle the fur up, kind of lightly grab the skin, and they don't get too reactive. Then put them in the tub. And that's going to help you with that. So that's some of the tips for in the tub. Rinse from the back forward. You don't have to wash the head the first time or the first few times. Like I said before, your puppy is not going to let you do things with the face and the head that they will not let you do with the body. So get cooperation with the body, then start building towards working with the head, working with the face, and you'll just have so much more positive results for that. Now you can see this puppy is just generally a little more, I want to, and it's fine. I've just kind of changed hands a little bit, or just let her move around a little. But then if she was about to like get in a position where she could jump out of my arms or something, either I pull her toward me, or this would be when I might start putting my my hand on the back of the neck just to let her know, no, we can't do all of that. Can't do all of that. And now she's reacting a little because she's realized I put my hand there on purpose. I'm kind of controlling her. But that's part of the learning process. Part of being not entitled to cooperation. You have to build it. It's back to the beginning of what I said. It's a relationship that you're building, and you have to build it by supporting them through their instinctive responses while building their muscles for impulse control. And once you are doing both of those things, then you have a foundation to communicate with them non-verbally or verbally, but we don't speak the same language. So we have to build a common language together. And with dogs, that's a combination of verbal, vocalization, touch, mood, energy. Now she's flailing a little bit more, and it's a little harder to control her. So I kind of lift her up, sit her back down in my lap a little bit harder. And now for a minute, we'll do some of this so we can get back to, oh, okay, from the puppy. Thank you, Zoom. Get back to, oh, okay. And then when we get back to, oh, okay, then I take that arm away. And then if she goes right back to it, oh. And we may have a tantrum coming on. We may, and that's okay. This is where you don't take it personally. You don't get mad. Good. I had one moment of success. I could say good, but then she started flailing right away. So, I know. So when they're flailing, when they are resisting, that's when you just have to take on the mental energy of, I got all day. And for you people on this webinar, if it takes me 10 minutes to get to a stopping place with this puppy, then that's what's going to happen. There, we got cooperation. Perfect time for me to say, okay, good puppy. Thank you. Carry her back over to the crate and put her in. Timing is so important when you're building the cooperation. You can't quit when they're struggling, and you have to identify that moment when they have decided to comply with you. And sometimes you have to choose that moment to be done, even if you're not done. That's a little bit farther in the course, but there are times when you're like, no, I just need to do one more thing and we'll be finished. But that need for you on your part to do one more thing just triggered a whole new tantrum. And now you're there for another 10 minutes. Or worse, you do the one more thing and then you put the puppy down, and now the puppy has learned, oh, sometimes when I struggle and I'm a real pill, then it's over. Let me try that again. Let me try that right away. So much of learning to groom your puppy in the beginning is just these basic restraint things. Whether you're going to go on and groom your puppy yourself through their puppyhood, through their whole life, or whether you're just trying to give them a really good start before you can get into have them professionally groomed, it's all still the same. And whatever you can do to teach your puppy about restraint and cooperation and build their muscles for impulse control and help to not trigger their instincts by working in other ways that are a little less triggering for them, that's really just going to make everything you do in grooming easier. Because one of people's biggest fears is, I don't want to hurt the puppy. What if they won't be still? What if I accidentally cut them with the scissors or the clippers? Well, accidents do happen sometimes, but the more you have cultivated the relationship with your puppy to be still and to be calm, and that it's not a confrontational situation, the less those kind of situations are going to come up where a dangerous outcome might happen. the time we're the most likely to make a mistake that could involve injuring the puppy or even ourselves is because we're trying to work on a moving target on a puppy that's still not cooperating with us about basic restraint. So that's why that's the 90% of what I had to say today is these are the basics. This is learning to groom your puppy. Technique comes later. The technique is honestly irrelevant if you don't have a puppy who's cooperative and who will be still for you. So I hope that helps everybody get started. And just as a reminder, here at the end, we're about to end the recording. But if you are watching this recording and you would like some information, some more information about the Learn to Groom Your Schnauzer Puppy program, you can email me at strawhatstandards@gmail.com. And wherever you're watching this recording from, there's going to be a link to my Calendly, so you could also schedule a consultation call with me to find out if the program's right for you and your puppy. And so I hope to see you in the group. I've got a nice core group already going, so got nice critical mass, good number of people started, but it's still a small enough group that everybody who's in it, if you need some special help, special attention, there's plenty of me to go around. And so I'll be happy to see you in the group. Love to help you with your puppy and, help your puppy get a great start. All right. Stay around if you'd like, if you have any special questions about the program. And thank you for attending my webinar. I really hope that it helped you and your puppy. Thank you so much.